We have quorum.
Ryan is online today.
Hi, everybody. It feels weird to be over here. I haven't been online in a long time, but back-to-back meetings. Apologize. Nadia, did you say we had quorum?
Yes.
All right, so I can call the meeting to order. And uh, first item of business is public comment. Do we have anyone online or at the meeting that would like to give public comment?
Online. I don't see any in the room.
All right. Moving on, Nadia, would you mind doing roll call? Because I don't have the list here with me.
Yes. So I have started. We have Bruce, Chris,
Here.
Dave,
Here.
Debbie.
Here.
He's like, oh, okay, that's Dave. Yeah. Dina. Okay, Haley. Here. John.
Yes.
Rochelle.
Here.
Lincoln.
Right.
Nathan, I believe, is gonna join late. Nina. And Paul
Here.
and Paul Owen.
All right, was that everyone, Nadia? I'm sorry, I can't hear you guys.
That was everyone.
I can't hear.
Yes, you can't hear. It's supposed to
I
be good speakers, but
I can hear now.
okay.
This is why I'm usually in the conference room with y'all.
Oh,
I see we're already on the slide. Next up is Molly Rogers with the Executive Director report.
are we doing? This was public comment.
We have public comment.
It sounds like Zoom, right?
Yes. One individual across from you.
Oh, hi. Can we backtrack a little bit, Ryan? We have someone here for public comment.
Yes, absolutely.
We are registered, but this is my first meeting. My name is Weya Vallejo. I wanted to give a public comment. It's brief. I am a current Section 8 HBC participant, and I want to advocate for the Family Self-Sufficiency HUD program at Section 8, where in Washington County, we want to receive and open more funding by spreading information on the benefits of this program. I also want to open dialogue about the disconnect of information about this program and stress the importance of this program to promote participants to graduate from Section 8. I will reveal the power of change, participants' lives with the FSS program in Washington County Housing and promote its funding in an informative way for the community to understand. I want to use the metacognition cycle to reflect on the 25-year FSS program strengths and weaknesses, then display the FSS program approach with strategies demonstrating on why this program gives such strong results for the community and for the government. I did apply online to become a volunteer for the committee. I am disabled and I am a voucher holder, and I'm not currently in the FSS program, but I want to advocate for the program because it actually delivers excellent results, and it's been closed for new applicants for over a year. And it actually will end the cycle of a person being on government housing endlessly without reaching goals for success. And the goal is to graduate and to become self-sufficient. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Sorry, I missed your name.
Waya,
Waya,
Wahya.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. You're welcome to come and listen into the rest of our meeting,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know.
going to.
And we really appreciate your public comment, so feel free to listen.
Yeah, and I also want to say that the employees in the FSS program are absolutely amazing. Peter, Cheyenne, there's other people that are coordinators for the Section 8 participants. And I think that it would be great to have more coordinators with more funding and also recognize those employees and recognize the Section 8 employees in general for what they do for our community to make housing possible.
We will pass that kudos along. Thank you so much.
Yeah, getting public comment, that's a big deal. Take a second. Thank you for coming in. It's
Sure, at every meeting going
important.
forward. I definitely want to be a person to speak as a participant. To make sure that the community understands that there is a bridge that we need to make between the participants and the workers to make a better program. And also to make success so that people can graduate and have, you know, permanent housing. That's the whole goal. And, you know, that's why I want to dedicate my service to this board. To make sure that other community vulnerable populations and low income populations can, you know, graduate from Section 8.
Well said.
And thank you for your time, everybody, and nice to meet you. Sorry, it's my first meeting, so I didn't know.
Yes.
Well, we have a recruitment going, so actually, Emily, want to speak to the recruitment where we actually.
Yes, I
Go
believe
and
you've
make-
applied. We'll be in touch with next steps.
Reference cards too, I just didn't know how to put them online.
You can email.
Waya, I don't want you to feel ignored. We do have to get to the rest of
Yeah.
our regular business, but thank you so much.
Thank
for being
you so
here
much,
today.
thank you for your time.
Yeah, and my name's Emily, by the way. I'm missing my name card, but feel free to grab me after too. if you have other
Okay,
questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And now let's move on to, now we have Molly Rogers and the Executive Director report.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Nice to see. We've got full quorum today. All right, with the change with our scheduling, because next week is spring break, hopefully many of you are getting some time to take a little respite or a break or holiday. I am actually taking next week off, so call Jill. Or Jess. I wanted to bring to your attention a few emerging federal issues that I'm raising for a while now. And the biggest issue, of course, is the proposed change. Nathan's not here. Nathan's been following this most closely, but the change in what they're calling Section 214 of their program. So it's a subset of the HUD programs that they are telling us we have to essentially eliminate our mixed status household opportunity to subsidize families that have a mix of citizens and some kind of ineligible household. So it's a different variety of different immigration statuses that we want to be able to support families that are unified regardless of their immigration status. And I want to just make you aware that we are going to be doing a deep dive on this issue next month. Because we have a 60-day public comment period. And what we're going to be doing is actually doing a work session with our Housing Authority Board of Directors on this issue. They're the ones who essentially green light us as a governing body to submit public comment. So we're working on those draft comments as well. But what I'd like to ask, because of the timing of that meeting being April 7th, I encourage you all to join in on that. It will be sort of the board discussion and then with our two resident commissioners, but also that once they set our policy position, then we can then go ahead and tell other partners that this is what our policy position is. So the cadence is such that, oh, there's Nathan. Perfect timing. I was just talking about you.
So good.
No. Just to quickly update you, we're preparing for a work session with our Housing Authority Board of Directors, Nathan, on April 7th to talk about the mixed status proposed rule from HUD. So once we are able to get that green light, assuming we do, I'd like to be able to work with the co-chairs here. Ryan, this is a little bit of a signal for you to be able to pull together a letter that is, you know, from this committee as well. We want to get as much public comment as we possibly can. But I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to ask questions. Make sure questions are being answered. Of course, a lot of them will be answered on April 7th, but the timing is such that the comments have to be submitted on April 21st. So it gives us a 2-week window. Ryan, our co-chair, Chair Kane, around being able to pull together. We can help, of course, help craft and draft a letter for you, but just wanted to get a pulse check from everyone that we may want to talk later about some kind of making sure you guys are comfortable with authorizing essentially Chair Kane to work with staff to draft that letter for submission.
Yeah, do we, can I get an invite for that April 7th meeting? And do we want to go ahead and vote right now, or is that going to happen later of getting the advisory committee to approve me working with the housing authority to draft that letter?
We can vote now. We would need, so the motion would be to designate Chair Ryan Kane as a signee for the letter submittal to HUD addressing mixed status household rule change. That's what's before us, and we need someone who will move, and then someone just second.
I'll move that. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Chair Kane, that's you.
That's okay. Anyone oppose?
I just pulled it out.
I didn't hear any opposition. Motion passes.
All right, I'll go back to my regularly scheduled updates. Appreciate that quick motion for everyone. But just a quick commentary, we really wholeheartedly oppose any chance that the federal government will remove members of households, essentially forcing children to decide whether they get assistance or whether heads of households are removed from their own household. So it's really a devastating policy that they're putting in motion. From that, I also on a similar front in terms of federal potential changes, we were invited to join a small group of guests to speak with a HUD appointee, Dr. Robert Marbut, who's a senior policy advisor on homelessness. You might have seen some of that in the newspaper. It was interesting how what things get news traction, but a HUD official coming in, and essentially what is the part that the news I think was trying to elevate is HUD is trying to change policies such as housing first and harm reduction, and signal to us that they're going to be changing those expectations and requirements through the continuum of care grant application once that next NOFO goes forward. So this one has been caught up in litigation, caught up in other sort of legal challenges, and they sort of delayed the release of the continuum of care NOFO. So that we know that is coming sometime in the next few months. We've been preparing for the changes in the continuum of care, but they've decided to do this tour of sorts, coming out to certain communities to talk to local leaders about this change in policy. And perhaps think about different, like, trying to change the way we're looking at how we do homelessness programs. So in our community, we of course do all kinds of different housing interventions, including Housing First, but also other opportunities like transitional housing and shelter. So we will be able to adapt our application to make sure we continue to have federal funds flowing, and we have other resources such as the supportive housing services measure that can backfill things that would be deprioritized by HUD. But I just wanted to bring to you, we were invited to join that table and have discussion with Dr. Marvitt. I was not there. I had a conflict. Jess Larson, Assistant Director Jess Larson was there. Our Commissioner Snyder was there. And then other electeds in the region, such as Mayor Wilson and some Metro councilors, and of course Multnomah County, I believe, Commissioner Singleton. So it was just a conversation, but I think it was them signaling we are going to be making some different policy choices going forward. I believe last month, I already mentioned to you an opportunity for us to really be part of a community screening of a documentary that I think is being shown in a different communities such as Beaverton. And we wanted to sponsor one as well for our community partners, including this advisory body. It's called No Place to Grow Old. And it's really well done in how they track many people who are trying to navigate through the homeless system and our housing system, and people have been frankly on the streets for a long time. And I think it's just a way for us to elevate one of the fastest growing homeless population experiencing homelessness are seniors. People in particular, and people who have disabilities. And it really is a commentary on the systems we've created and how challenging it can be to navigate sometimes. So I think it's just also, I believe, a call to action. As we watched it as a whole department over the holidays as part of our all staff holiday event. And it was just a very good reflection time about what role we play in helping stem that tide around that one part of that segment of population.
Molly, remind me on the date when we can see it, the 30th of March? Sure.
April 1st.
April 1st.
So we're gonna have it at the Public Services Building Auditorium, just right across the street. It's from 9 to 11, and we'll have guest speakers, including our very own Assistant Director Larson here. Will come and just for your awareness, spent a lot of time working for Northwest Pilot Project, which is the largest senior focused social service provider in Portland. So it's great having experts here within our own team to really elevate this issue. We're also getting other media attention, not just who's coming to town to visit us, but also really elevating the true successes of the supportive housing services measure. I think reporter Lillian Mongu Hughes has taken this on to show the incredible impact it's made in thousands of people's lives. And this one was, I think we talked last month about one article that was actually on the front cover. There was a subsequent one that was really focusing more on our rental assistance and really continuing to tell the stories of the people's lives who've been affected by it. So I highly recommend and encourage you all to read that. And also a shout out to our fabulous Emily Roots here, our communications manager, who keeps pitching these great articles and a great collaboration with the different counties and Metro to help tell that bigger story. So great job, everyone. And then without further ado, just wanted to let you all help you guys be part of our network. We're hiring 2 folks on our real estate development team. We've got lots of projects, do we not, Lisa Varon? And we need people to help Lisa out. We've got 12 capital projects that are right now, or active projects in some shape or form, between our supportive housing work, between our affordable housing aside and our ending homelessness and building out facilities across the community. So we have plenty of work. So spread the word, and we would love to have you help us figure out how we build out that team. Be part of that recruitment. Lisa, when are those recruitments?
Yeah, so the senior capital improvements program manager, so we have to work with the counties. Just work with me. This is really our development manager position, someone to oversee the development team, which is a team of 3 plus many third-party consultants. That closes this coming Sunday. And that's a key position for someone who really is a development expert in affordable housing. And then we just opened up a senior program coordinator, which in development speak is a senior project manager essentially. And that person will oversee a variety of real estate projects that we have going on right now. We have I think 4 projects in pre-development and 1 in construction, which is a little intensive. You usually don't want that many in pre-development at one time. So we're a bit slammed. And then we also have a partnership with SHS Side of House to support them on their various funded projects throughout the county. If you have any questions or you want to refer someone to me or Jill, we're both available. I am on vacation next week. So, but we're available to chat with people about the opportunities. We're open to people who are taking the next step in their career and open to, really great candidates that can be a part of our growing development team.
Speaking of recruitment, we're also having active recruitment for us to increase the number of memberships, advisory body committee members here, as well as some of our other committees. We're trying to do as much as we can. Nadia, when are those all close? And what are we looking for?
March 27th, and we are primarily looking for residents at this time. So we've reached out, we've gotten a lot of folks who are interested, but spread the word.
But are we increasing membership in other arenas at all?
So for HAC or RAD, the Resident Advisory Board, we are looking for Homeless Solutions Advisory Council as well. We have 1 spot that's a member at large spot.
But for HAC specifically, we only have recruitment available for residents in the Housing Choice Voucher and Public Housing Program right now.
One
We
quick
had some
question.
timely public comment today.
You want me to save questions till the end?
And now I'm ready for questions.
Great segue.
Perfect.
Let's just real quick question. The job descriptions of
Yeah.
those jobs, have those been done by any type of 1099 or contract people in the past, or have those been internal positions that you're trying to fill?
The senior program coordinator existed as another position, which we reclassified, kind of a lower level
Okay.
position. So we upgraded 2 existing positions within the organization. But to answer what I think you're trying to ask about, we're kind of operating a hybrid program where we have third-party development consultants who are working with our project managers right now to get the projects done.
Got it. Yep, that was it. Thank you.
And any other questions?
Well, to end, I'll just acknowledge the flickering. I know it's distracting. Thank you all for being patient with us. If you see Nadia, Martin, and I on our phones, it's because we've been messaging, trying to troubleshoot. We're going to continue on with our agenda, but we may transition at one point to attempting someone else sharing their screen to see if that clears it up. But I don't want to waste time in our valuable meeting doing too much troubleshooting. So thank you for being patient.
We don't see it over here, so. Thank you, Molly. And I apologize, I won't be able to make it to the screening on April 1st. I'll be presenting down in Southern Oregon. But I do recommend that anyone on the advisory committee go to that. It's a really moving and not, it's what, like 45 minutes. So you're not crying for 2 hours at least. And so moving on, we next up have Nadia for the staff liaison update.
So the big update that I have is on bylaws, which we're gonna get to in just a moment. So I will pass it back to you, Ryan, and you have anything that you want to update?
I only had one update. This came from a meeting earlier this week, and I wanted the advisory committee and the housing authority to be aware of this because I don't know how much public knowledge it is. The Housing Oregon is planning on removing their recommendation for LIFT specific funding towards permanent supportive housing. There was $80 million in the last biennium budget, the state budget, dedicated specifically for permanent supportive housing. They are recommending that be zero on the next biennium. So you can still use LIFT funds for permanent supportive housing. There just isn't dedicated funds for those programs. And I don't know if you're passionate about permanent supportive housing like I am and you want to see those funds kept, I recommend just sending Housing Oregon a note saying that you would like to see those funds, you would like to see them recommend those funds stay.
Appreciate the.
Yeah.
We'll be in touch.
Okay.
After this.
Thanks. All right. So with that, Nadia, back to you on the bylaws.
All right. So we've been working on this for a while. So hopefully it's not completely new to everyone here. We've been revising the bylaws for HACS. Just as part of routine maintenance that we felt needed to be done, and to really also bring a lot of administrative clarity to some of the language that's in the bylaws. So we focused on membership appointment, responsibilities, officer roles, elections, procedures, and practices, consistency across HAC and Solutions Council bylaws as well. So some of the routine policy maintenance is simply reflecting the role of the staff liaison and officer roles, incorporating annual planning and orientation into the bylaws, and then affirming commitment to federal and state fair housing laws with the language that reflects both alignment with the LAO and inclusive language. So with membership, we put a range, so it's 9 to 15 members instead of only 15 members or up to 15 members. And to, I think another addition was simply to, there are 2 terms that each member can serve, but also that after a 1-year hiatus, members can apply again if they want to. And then we talked about absences, instead of just 4 absences, it's unexcused absences specifically. With officers, there was a change from vice chair and chair to co-chairs. Will share responsibilities for chairing the meetings and establishing a term of 2 years. We talked about temporary work groups as needed, commitment to annual work planning, public meeting laws, and to start having an annual review of the bylaws, because the last time that these bylaws were reviewed was several years ago. And then there was a introduction of the basic code of conduct for committee members. Pretty standard, I think, no, prohibiting violence and harassment and meeting all obligations under Washington County and the Housing Authority contracts and agreements. And maintaining good public safety. We would like to present these to Chabad for final approval on April 7th. Before we do that, we would like all of you to let us know if you have any questions, or if we can, if you approve, we can vote on it.
Yeah, so first, anyone have any questions about the bylaw revisions? It's
So I have
been,
one comment, this is John. So, the only thing I'm asking is if we're gonna vote on it's fine, but I'm sure if, I know you sent us a draft a couple of weeks ago, which I've read, there was been changes, but you've done subsequent changes since then. So I'm trying to figure out, these are those changes, I mean, what we didn't get in the package was actually the redrafted bylaws to read. So I was trying to figure out
The final.
the final draft. I mean, all I had was highlights, so I don't really know what the final draft reads, and because I was going through myself trying to see if you attached the final thing for me to read, and there wasn't one. And so it's kind of hard to know, is there something buried in there that I don't think there is. I mean, I've seen the other drafts, I'm sure it's all fine, but I don't know if there's something buried in there that I would object to because I don't have the final draft to read. So that's my comment.
Yes, I can send that out.
I mean, I'm sure it's fine, because I've looked at prior ones, I'm just saying, it's more a procedural thing, that I'm just on the final document to read.
yeah, that my understanding is there weren't any changes that weren't in that packet. So anything that wasn't sent stays the same from the previous bylaws. Nadia, that's correct, right?
Yeah, it wasn't as substantive as, yeah, but we'll definitely send the final one.
I'm sure it's fine, I'm not objecting to what's happening, I'm just saying it's more a procedural thing, just would have been nice if it was cool for those who wanted to read the final document, they could read it instead of trying to read highlights.
Yeah,
How about this? Was it part of the packet, Nadia?
it was, I didn't send the final ones. We've sent previous iterations. Yeah, so.
Yeah,
And then
okay,
this time
so
we
we
just
will
did the
get
highlight.
you all the latest version, I guess what we're likely want to. I think we captured the highlights or the lowlights in these bullets, and I think what maybe the motion is not necessarily the draft as written, because we haven't seen it, but the draft as conceived is the part of the bullets, and I'm wondering if that would be suffice to you all. Chair Kane, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the motion would be, do we approve the housing authority to take the changes that were discussed today in this meeting to Chabad for approval?
Yeah, that make sure they're materially consistent with the concepts presented today in those slides.
And one final offer is we can run upstairs now and get printed copies for everyone here and send that out so that you all can have that as you leave today.
Or you can email it out. It just seems procedurally it's the right thing.
Yep.
to do.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to, I don't have what you guys previously, I just know that the only sort of things that were perhaps changed in the last iteration, it was just a little bit more flexibility for us to not have very, very specific slots like Bruce being an elderly rep.
Yeah.
Created a little bit of some, we will endeavor to recruit based on these level of subject matter expertise, but we don't have to be beholden and prevent us from having full membership if we don't hit every slot is picked. So that was just one of the other, I just want to make sure you're all aware of that bigger change. But we can call you whatever you want, Bruce.
Getting my arms around it, I like it.
Okay, so we still need a motion to allow that we approve the housing authority to take the revisions that were discussed today for Chabad to review the overall bylaws and approve at the next Chabad meeting. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Can I get a second?
Second?
In all of those in favor?
I,
Any opposed? I do not hear any opposition. We will get the full versions out. Thank you for bringing that up, and motion passes. All right, so next up we have M. Nichols.
Thank you, Ryan. Can I get the next slide, please? You get a chance. I'm M. Nichols. I'm the housing program coordinator. That's my classification. I'm the PHA policy coordinator, more general policy coordinator. The descriptive title is in flux. I apologize. Today, I'm bringing to you the Housing Authority Annual Plan, our proposed 2026 submission to HUD. And this is going to go to Chabad on April 7th and be submitted to HUD in before April 17th. That's our deadline. Our goals today when working with the HAC are to provide a general update on the PHA annual plan and to seek your recommendation to Chabad to approve these documents for HAC submission. Next slide, please. I think you're familiar with this, but we'll do a recap of what these documents are. HUD has a lot of documents for very similar names. So the annual plan is a strategic document that defines our mission, and it goes along with our MTW supplement, which describes our planned use of moving to work flexibilities and priorities. The Moving to Work program is a program that allows certain housing authorities across the United States to have specific waivers from very specific regulations to support us meeting local needs more efficiently and effectively. These documents both require a public comment period and a public hearing. That public hearing will take place on April 7th. And again, they're due on April 17th. The annual plan gives information on PHA operations, programs and services, general reports on progress for our mission and goals, and it includes the MTW supplement as an attachment. So those documents go hand in hand. The MTW supplement is an attachment to the annual plan. And again, it's going to go into detail about how we're using our MTW flexibilities and specifically which HUD regulations are being waived for us and in what manner. It's also where we would request new moving to work waivers or modifications to how we're using our current waivers. And next slide, please. It's a busy year, 2026. The policy context really impacts how we are approaching these documents. On the federal level, we have reduced HUD field office staffing supporting us right now. We're negotiating or navigating shifting federal priorities. There's certain procedural uncertainties as HUD sort of changes how we do our work. We're projecting administrative funding constraints. There have been new funding conditions applied to historic funding sources, and HUD has increased the review of even previously approved moving to work waivers. So a lot going on the federal level. Here at our agency, we are encountering a milestone year for our tiered rent study, which is a moving to work initiative where us and 9 other housing authorities across the country are participating in a longitudinal study that explores how changes in rent calculation can support household self-sufficiency and hopefully income growth for work-likely households. And so this is the midpoint of that study, and it's a midpoint that involves a comprehensive recertification of those household progress. It'll give us a lot of information about whether or not HUD's goals are being achieved by this study, or whether or not we're learning that the policies don't support that. So we're going to be recertifying those households that haven't been recertified since the beginning of the study and learning a lot from that. We are, oh, sorry, can you go back one, Nadia? Oh, Martin this time. We have our ongoing Section 18 disposition that our public housing and our development team, our RED team are pursuing. And there's other MTW activities that we're working on implementing, including changes to our self-sufficiency program to make it more accessible to more of the persons participating in it. And we're also preparing to respond to program changes from HUD. That includes the potential changes for the mixed status household eligibility that Molly referenced earlier. It also includes the sunset of the emergency housing voucher program. So ton going on for us, which has meant that for, if I can get the next slide, please, thank you. For our annual plan, our priorities are really sustainability and performance. So we're trying to maintain our work in our goal areas, and we're doing what we can to preserve our existing moving to work flexibilities and to really maximize how we're using those. We are also continuing to pay attention to strict compliance with HUD program rules. We don't want to invite any concern from HUD right now. And we're trying to maintain our operational capacity so that we can keep being nimble when we're responding to HUD policy changes. So our annual plan approach, it focuses on alignment with HUD priorities and avoiding additional administrative burden. The result is that it's not our most exciting plan year. We're making sure we're focusing on how we're using the current waivers, and we are not seeking approval for new waivers. I will say though, we have 25 approved MTW flexibilities. So we've already asked for and been approved for a lot. And so we have a lot of room when working with those existing flexibilities to continue to make improvements to our operations and be more responsive to household needs. So the next slide, please. Thank you. There are some updates to our annual plan, even if they are more of the routine maintenance variety, not necessarily the new MTW activities variety. That includes updates to our statement of housing needs. Since our last annual plan, the consolidated plan in our region has been updated. We have a new point in time count for people experiencing homelessness. And we have an updated waiting list opening that changes the number of people who are on our waiting list. So all of that has been reflected in our statement of housing needs updates. Progress report, we've reflected our recent progress in HAWK operations and development activities. We've done a lot in the last year, like our Section 18 disposition, affordable housing preservation project, and also in our rental assistance division, a big push to move towards online recertifications for many households, which frees up a lot of staff time. We are reporting on our clean audit status, which is nice. And we're making sure that we're updating the documents to reflect our continued compliance with fair housing laws and alignment with county access and opportunity priorities. So we're glad to make those changes. These documents require a lot of public engagement and participation, and our values also require us to fully engage with the public. So there has been a lot of engagement with these documents. The public comment period formally was between February 6th and it will end on March 23rd. It was advertised in the Oregonian. It's on our website. And no comments have been received at this time. We will, of course, update the final document on the 23rd to include any comments that were received. Our resident advisory board is an important part of the development of these documents. Their consultation actually begins a few months before the document submission. So we've met with them now 3 times, November, January, and March. At our March 16th meeting this Monday, they did vote in support of this document. Now we're meeting with you. We hope you will all support the annual plan. And then our public hearing will be on April 7th, and that's where we will present to the Housing Authority Board of Directors. So now, questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Public comment.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Wea, until you're an official committee member, your participation is restricted to public comment. Please grab any of us afterwards and we can have that conversation.
Okay.
I'm glad to answer questions.
I have a question just for my general knowledge. You said that you're gonna use the continued 25 approved flexibilities compared to other MTWs at a similar number?
It's a lot for the expansion agencies. I should try to get a count of it, but we have more than our peers in our cohort.
Okay.
Oh yes, go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry.
Question about those as well. You said you're not applying to any new, but just to clarify, you don't lose those when someone, you maintain those for somebody else when someone moves out of that program, correct?
So when, what we're not applying for new right now is new moving to work waivers for specific HUD regulations. We're maintaining the 25 waivers that we have right now and all of those sort of flexibilities that HUD has granted us. So we are not losing any flexibilities. But we're also not requesting more this specific plan yet. Any other questions?
I guess I'll just ask maybe the elephant in the room, question. Are there certain flexibilities or waivers you would have liked to have requested if the political climate within HUD were different?
I think that partly because of our, what we have to learn about our moving to work tiered rent study. I don't know if there's anything major that I really wish
That you
I
wish
could
you
request.
Okay.
Not this year. There's certainly more we could always explore and
Sure.
do, but I do think it makes a ton of sense for us to focus this year on sort of operationally managing that midterm of the tiered rent study.
That's a
There
great
could-
question.
There could be agency-specific waivers that we might consider that can support us being more flexible for our EHV households, but we are already able to do a lot of that with our currently approved waiting list flexibilities. So I do feel good about it. Anything you'd add to that, Liz?
I think, yeah, you hit it really well, and specifically we were aggressive and proactive in our first waivers, and so we kind of hit all of the ones that we know that we could that were outside of the study. So it's always evaluating though, and it is always evaluating, are these going to be walked back by some changes? So that is part of the evaluation that comes up. It's a great question.
And when the resident advisory board approved earlier this week, did they have any major concerns that we should know about?
No. The resident advisory board did make general comments. Specifically, they were supporting our work in housing development. They had a lot of positive things to say about that, especially to the extent that that work can be partnered with supportive services. They also were very supportive of our operational improvements around online recertification, and they had specific recommendations to us about how we can make sure that those online formats, that we continue to make those more visually accessible. However, they didn't have any comments that pertain directly to the plan itself.
Thank you. So, any other questions or comments on this? So what we need to decide right now is to recommend the annual plan supplement for the Chabad submission on April 7th. So a lot of voting today. So can I get a motion for the HAC committee to recommend this to be presented to Chabad on April 7th?
So moved. I move.
And
Second.
Second, thank you. And all of those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I did not hear any opposition, so motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If you could go to the next slide, please. So what will happen next? Today was your opportunity to review. On March 23rd, the public comment period will end. At that point, these documents will be finalized for Chabad, basically incorporating the public comments, your vote, and the RAB comments. And then we'll proceed to our public hearing. There will be some documents that the chair will finalize for us after the Chabad meeting. The Chabad chair is who I'm referring to in this case. Multiple chairs in play. And then I will submit to HUD, and we will hopefully, last year we saw approval pretty quickly. I don't know if that was typical, but we will hopefully have approval of our plan before our July 1st. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Em. And now we're moving on to Ryan and Steve and about the Hawk budget primer.
Hey, good morning. Good to see everybody. So I'll just start off quickly. Let's go to the next slide and go over what we're going to cover today. So we'll talk about this body's roles, duties, and responsibilities as it relates to budget. For anyone who is not remembering, around June, May of last year, Steve's going to talk about our budget calendars and timelines, give a quick overview of our fund structure and our budget structure, and then we'll talk about what's next and then answer any questions that you have coming into this budget season. Let's go to the next slide. So this group gets to provide oversight and input on our budgeting process. You'll get to look at our proposed budget in advance, recommend it to the Housing Authority Board of Directors. Throughout this year, we've been reviewing our revenues and expenditures and learning a lot. And there's also a communications role, so kind of ambassadors to the work, to the public, to say that the process that we have through your oversight role is transparent and collaborative, and that we are effectively managing our financial resources. Let's go to the next slide. So we will be in 2 different public meetings reviewing the budget with this body. We will have opportunities for public input during one of those meetings. You will receive in advance and get to analyze our proposed budget, make recommendations for changes before we come back to you to recommend it to the Board of Directors. And then ultimately the Habad will be the governing body that reviews, approves, and adopts our budget for a July 1st fiscal year start. And then before I pass it over to Steve, at our last meeting, this body recommended and the Housing Authority Board of Directors approved a policy for bad debt expense. And we're going to continue to put policies in place that kind of ensure transparency and good governance. And so the next one that you can expect to see from our department will be around a budget adjustment policy. So as you've noticed this year, there are things that we didn't accurately forecast in our budget. We've continued to show positive balances, and so it has trended in the right direction in terms of variance. But the further away a budget gets from your actual expenditures, the less meaningful it becomes. And so just like the county has a process to update their budget on a quarterly basis, we're also looking to be able to make those adjustments as we get new information throughout the year, with the goal of the budget to actual reports that you all see on a quarterly basis will start to more closely mirror what we refine our forecast throughout the year. And it should help us budget in the following years that we can start to identify trends. So that's the next policy that we expect to bring to this group. And we are hoping to pair our budget policy adoption with the adoption of the budget with the Housing Authority Board of Directors, so that we're headed into next year with a good framework in place for how we'll adapt and refine throughout the year. So I will pass it over to Steve at this point.
Thanks, Ryan. So just want to give you an overview on the calendar. Budgets never end, right? They go all year round. But we do have points in time that we have to hit certain milestones. So what I start with is last year, I wasn't here, but I read the materials. We had said as a department that we were going to do the Department of Housing Services and the Housing Authority budgets concurrently for the first time this year. And I can happy to say that we did. We were able to run in January into early February a process to kick off, develop, and do internal reviews on the entire budget, so we can get a full picture of kind of what the department looks like. Then after that, as we get into February and March, the focus turned to the Department of Housing Services so we can meet the county requirements. Again, I'm happy to relay that we've done that. It's into proposed budget status now and is going forward to the Board of County Commissioners and for public comment, hopefully for adoption in a couple months. So now we're back into focusing on our Hawk budget, which is why we're here with the primer today. We plan to have a preliminary budget to review by end of April. We'll be back in May for a request to adopt the budget and for request for us to go forward to Chabad in June. That hopefully they will then adopt, and we can go July 1st with that budget for the next fiscal year. All right, next slide, please. So structure, as you're aware, we've got the two sides of the house with Department of Housing Services, which is overseen by the Board of County Commissioners. And within there, we've got our homeless services, Metro Affordable Housing Bond, and Supportive Housing Services. And then we've got our Housing Authority budget, which is under the review of the Chabad, which covers our rental assistance, public housing, and affordable housing funding. What we try to show on this slide too is that there is some interoperability between the budgets here. So from the Department of Housing Services, we're able to send SHS and community continuum of care funds for rental assistance over to the Housing Authority. And then because all of our staffing is funded through the Department of Housing Services, we do a reimbursement back from Housing Authority for those resources that support the Housing Authority throughout the year. And so what we'll continue to do is try to make sure we show how the budgets on each side line up and how there is that interoperability. So there's no confusion and full transparency. Next slide. So I'm not going to go through everything on here. There's a lot around the structure of budget and a lot of financial terms, maybe a couple to mention. Here, just that we talk about funds, and I'll talk about that more on the next slide. It's sort of a segregation of resources and expenditures. So you can think of them as sort of a separate bank account or checkbook. So like on the Department of Housing Services side, we have one for the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. We have one for Supportive Housing Services. On the Housing Authority, in the past, we've had multiple funds. As we go forward with the new chart of accounts, it's all going to be one fund and then broken up by cost center, which is our next term. And you can think of a cost center as a way for us to sort of separate programs. And again, I'll show more about that in the next one, but it's to make sure that we can group related work activities and keep them separate from a budget perspective and make sure that we're seeing the revenues and expenditures for those separate before we roll it up to the full department. And then it's worth mentioning, general fund as well. That's where we get money from the county, mainly received for property taxes. That's mostly for the Department of Housing Services side. And we get that primarily for matching requirements for federal funds to make sure that we're maximizing the funding opportunities that we have. Next slide. So these are the fund structures. There's a lot of numbers on here. I would say don't worry about the numbers themselves, but wanted to show that this year with the implementation of our new ERP system with Workday, there was a new chart of accounts. And so on the Housing Authority side, maybe last year, if you remember, we had a bunch of funds called 400 funds, 404, 406, et cetera. That has changed. And so now all the Housing Authority work is under one fund, 5660. And then each of the programs is now based on a cost center, which is the numbers after the dash. So you can see how we've got different funds and cost centers for federal vouchers, public housing, and affordable housing development. And again, that's a way for us to organize our work and our budgets to make sure that we can manage them effectively. And so if there's any questions about where something falls, this is a great place to look. And then we've got the detail behind that as we develop the budget. And then as we do our budget to actuals and look at how we're doing against our budget, this is how we look at it as well. Yeah, Bruce.
Real quick question. Just for example, I'll use Fund 6510. Is that specific? Can the general funds come to save that program? Can you cross-pollinate, or those funds say these dollars are in this fund, these dollars in that fund? Does that make sense?
I think so. With this one specifically, that fund holds our COC program. So that's where we receive and administer COC funds.
Right.
And that actually is where most of our general fund support in the county comes, is to be a matching to that COC. There's a 25% match requirement. And so, yeah, different funding sources can flow into a single fund and cost center.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, good question. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide. So just, I think this was a slide from last year's budget package, just to kind of highlight where our funding sources are. From the current fiscal year 25-26, we're about 74% federal funding. And actually the year before was a little bit higher. So this is something we'll continue to track, and as we bring in the budget in the next couple of months for you, we'll make sure to show the different buckets of funding that we have so that you're clear on what's coming from federal, what's coming from other sources as well. And provide full transparency on how that trends year over year.
We saw that shift coming a percentage, and it seems to be better than we had our worst fears of the federal percentage not decreasing as much as we had anticipated. Do we see any, I mean, the current administration's a little volatile right now, but do we see any red flags that percentage might go down in the next fiscal year?
At this point, there is broad bipartisan support for rental assistance programs and other funds that support affordability, right? Being a big buzzword heading into midterm elections. So those fears, even when the budget proposals come in with some pretty significant cuts, we have not seen an appetite from Congress to act on those. And it's also worth noting that in 24-25, we had more non-federal funds than most other housing authorities, and we've continued to increase that share. And just thinking about kind of a risk management perspective, it's good to have fund diversification so that we can kind of shift and move as needed. So we always have our eye on that percent split with the goal of having as diverse of funding sources as we can as the housing authority.
So that's interesting. Our budget's gonna be up 14 to 15 million year over year. Right? So that's coming from. Are we getting new programs? That's not all inflationary. So it's interesting. So I guess we get to the budget. That's a pretty big jump in an overall budget year over year.
Yeah, we're continuing to see increases come in anticipation of other revenues and developer fees that we're anticipating to come in.
So it's coming out of development you got going on.
And also the 24-25 or the 25-26 budget. So we're looking here. That was, I think, the primary jump that we saw in 25-26. The budget that we'll be coming back to you with will be the 26-27 budget. So you'll continue to see what that difference is.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm kind of looking at the years wrong, but then.
Yep.
How do you realistically diversify funding?
When we can, so
Revenue.
on that previous slide that Steve had up, there were two more funds at the bottom, and one of them was called enterprise funds.
Okay.
And that's when a government's engaging in business-like activities. And so for us, that's primarily through our real estate development, affordable housing development work. So where we can have revenues coming in through that activity, that is the primary area that we can diversify our funding sources, is through those enterprise activities in affordable housing development, where we're getting developer fees or other investments in partnerships.
Well, and that kind of treat my question, right? If I increase my fees for development and that demurs development, it's kind of a balance. That's what I was trying to understand. Does that make sense? I increase my fees, but the fees cause less development. The less development causes less revenue. Jill, sorry, so I'm trying not to extend, but I want to understand.
I just wanted to jump in for a minute.
Yeah.
On the budgets that you were looking at that Steve mentioned.
Right.
On there is none of the partnership fundings, right? So when we do a development, we generally, a lot of times, we put them into limited partnerships.
Got it.
So those are discrete component units that do not flow through the housing authority budget.
Okay.
The only thing that flows in for us is our developer fees and residual cash. So what you see in this orange, the delta, almost, I think it's about 10 million. A lot of that is inclusive of developer fees and other flows of funds we may get. And I believe some of that includes also our disposition proceeds, as well as some of the proceeds we're getting for the work we're doing with our colleagues in the homeless services in the assets we are purchasing on behalf of the homeless services programs, such as our Cornell Road transitional housing.
Right.
So that delta you see is, yes, it's not money directly from other, you can call it development activities, It includes our development activities, but it does not include all of our partnerships. Because, you know, Bruce, as you know, our development activities, one project is 50 million plus.
Right.
So it doesn't flow here.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide.
Nadia, I think there's a question.
Yes, Paul, just a quick question, I guess, following up on, I think, John's comment, because, you know, when you look at that, the chart on the right, which is the 25-26. So what's your estimate, I guess, of the 26-27? Is the 74% more or less going to hold, or are you thinking that that's going to drop to a lower percentage?
I'm not sure if I know at this point. We're still refining some forecasts about the funding that we'll receive from HUD after looking for some of those notifications, and I think refining our estimates on anticipated developer fees. So I think you'll probably likely see that in April.
Yeah, next month we'll have a much better sense of what that looks like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, which brings us to what's next. And so, you know, what's not on here is that, you know, we will target coming back in April and give you a preliminary look at what the budget looks like. We recognize that, you know, as we're talking the last couple of days, there's a tight timeline at the end of May, early June, coming in here to review a final budget with you guys on May 28th. And then we've got the Chabad on June 2nd. So we want to make sure is that we give you a chance to plenty of time to review the budget and make comments. So if we can get in here in April with a version, get your comments, bring in a final version at the end of May, and then go to Chabad, you know, the following week for review, with the goal to have adoption at the same time the county budgets are adopted in the middle of June, which then would go into effect for July 1st. And then we would come in quarterly to this body with reports on how we're doing against our budget. And also, as Ryan mentioned, what we'll plan to do as well is bring in the budget policy at the same time, so we can do that with the adoption of the budget for the next year. With that, we'll take any questions.
Sorry, one final. Do we feel at this point in time the projects and functions that we have to do day to day are fairly well aligned with the expenses? That means, you know, I mean, if you have 4 billion projects and your FTE is 1, the budget looks good, but the functionality is not so good because expenses are very sticky and revenue is very fleeting. So just how do you feel about the expense side, knowing revenues are always less sticky? You feel like we're fairly well aligned on expense versus things that we do each day?
I think that we'll have some, what I'll call minor to modest adjustments to make on the expenditure side headed into this year. And it's just kind of considering the significant growth that we've had and making sure that we're stabilizing that as a department. But generally speaking, well aligned.
Okay, thanks.
Can I make a comment? I'll preface it with, I have no business talking about a budget. Don't have a background there. The slide 34 on your funding sources frankly leaves me wanting to know a lot more. Acknowledging your funding sources as federal and all other funds feels inadequate in its transparency. I feel like maybe where my comment's coming from is I feel like that there's been a lot of conversations. I live in Multnomah County, but there's been a lot of conversations about local funds at a metro or county level that taxpayers are calling into question about approval of certain votes and such that have not been spent in a way that taxpayers are happy about, or frankly just haven't been spent.
Yep.
I feel like Washington County, and frankly Multnomah County for sure, could do a better job at explaining how critical those funds are, and having a chart like this that's all other funds doesn't acknowledge how impactful those are. So that's something that leaves me wanting to know a lot more about is like, of these other funds, how much of those are coming from those other resources? And really finding a way that Washington County is doing a good job. I hear you all on this, on the Oregonian and explaining how supportive housing services are impactful and how they're making change, but taxpayers really want to know how their money is being spent and that it actually is being spent on the things that, and so those types of slides would be a lot more telling, and I think also supportive of the use of those local types of funds. So I would love to see more clarity in that type of communication.
Great feedback, point taken. And so you will see all of that when you're reviewing our budget. You'll get in
Okay.
and all the details of where the funds are coming from. So
So this is just, this is a primer. Okay.
Ryan, can I just ask a question or a follow-up? This is only the housing authority,
just the housing.
right?
Yes.
So, cause I wanted, for Haley's question, like, because you have the housing services and a lot of the SHS money, which I think
Right,
is
that's where I'm
one of the
getting
hot
from.
topics
Yeah.
that we were talking about. That's not in this budget. right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be the
okay.
housing authority budget. We are attempting to communicate both of those more frequently. In kind of in tandem and how they work together, but this body is recommending for adoption the housing authority's budget
Okay.
only.
And may I just jump in for a minute, Haley, and also for Nathan, for the purpose of transparency. I just want to let you know, on the housing authority side, and actually also for the Department of Housing Services as a whole, our general funds that we get from taxpayers outside of SHS and Metro bonds, as Ryan said, the only amounts we're getting are for the, you can call it the required co-payment for our COC. So housing authority actually gets no funding at all
Okay,
from the public.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that.
Thank you, yeah.
Unlike maybe what you're reading in the news
Mhm.
about Portland Housing Bureau, because both Molly and I used to be there. So we're not getting any other funding. So all the additional funds you're seeing there, other funds, are resources that are either HUD approved, i.e. Section 18 dispo, or from our purchases, for example, of assets through our agreement with the supportive housing services, or internally generated funds through our developer fees, property tax due, so payments or other cash flow payments that we're getting from our projects.
Okay, that's very helpful.
Can I make one other quick comment? I've been doing this a long time and I still don't completely understand why there's a housing authority and the Department of Housing Services and the legal distinction. Maybe at some point at this committee, there could be a brief primer about why it's set up that way. Because for example, Multnomah County is not.
Yeah.
The housing authority is a completely separate body. So even though I think I should know this, and when you guys are talking, I sort of understand it, I still feel like maybe that could just, maybe there could be an annual like reminder, why are we doing things? Why are there big budgets? Why is there a Chabad and the
Yeah.
fire commissioner?
Yeah. Clearly, I didn't know by asking that question. Making statements.
I think that's an excellent point in how we do the initial intro, because it is really, we were sorry about the flickering, but if you go back to the intersectional slide. Nate.
It's the one where there's
Slide.
slides. right?
Yes.
Back and forth.
Yes.
As we're trying to get to that.
Right.
How we are inflowing, outflowing, we're interdependent, but yet we are separate legal entities, and therefore your authorization is to recommend the box, the blue box. To make sure we're meeting HUD's needs of us as what we call we're a special component unit for the county. So we could add in, and I think another slide or two, whenever we do this primer, that gets to that relationship between Hawk and the county writ large. And then it is really confusing because we do have staffing that's paid for the county, and then we disperse and transfer a portion of that to Hawk. Okay, so that's how we're interrelated.
The interesting part would be to see the funnels above that slide of revenue.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually,
So
that's
you
my
can see the
question.
buckets.
Yeah.
What? That's expense in the buckets, right?
No,
No, that's.
that's
That's
right. I kept
revenue?
flipping between this slide and the.
Got it, sorry.
the-
You're good.
Sorry to critique your slide. I'm a big revenue funnel seer.
Because the arrows go down and not up, I can understand why you think.
Right. I was thinking
Yeah.
revenue falls and expenses.
Right.
My whole mind's a P and L. It only goes one way.
So I think from this conversation though, you don't wanna make your presentation, you don't wanna be so like confusing, no one knows what the heck is going on. But with what's going on with Humboldt County, I think having charts or things that express, this is our source. Actually, Housing Authority of Washington County doesn't rely a lot on taxpayer money. I mean, how you do that,
Local tax.
so if somebody's asking you, you can say, we're different. And this is how we spend our money, and it was spent. But I'm not saying you have to like make all these little charts to show up, but at a high level. You have different audiences, you have this audience, you have the public audience, you have the Housing Authority Board audience, right? And just how you present that so people understand this is where our sources are, this is how we spend it, and we spent it in a prudent way. And and these are great charts, but I don't know, you don't want to create 10 more pages, but in like 2 or 3 pages, how do you tell that story? Is
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah, because that's the questions we get.
Right.
Mhm.
And then for some humor on this, I don't know, I should say, I'm saying some humor is.
Some budgetary humor.
Now, this is bringing my Jewish humor to this board. Because every time you say Chabad, there's a Jewish organization called Chabad. I keep thinking of these guys with yarmulkes approving your budget, but. That's, it's spelled differently, but it's just something. It's that little humor.
Housing Authority Board of Directors, but yeah.
Don, with it, when I started, they kept saying Chabad, I was really confused.
I'm pretty sure you have a much different group approving your budget.
I thought he was simply gonna tell a joke that says revenues outpace expenses.
Someone called it hay bod.
Do we-
Hay bod. Just.
Wow.
But,
I think that's-
really appreciate the input around telling the bigger story, especially in a given media environment and the
Yeah.
perceptions.
Yeah.
And we are a more complex entity, to be honest, and so that makes it a bigger challenge for us. But yet, this is why we have this kind of conversation. We need to be able to do it in a
Succinct.
Convincing way.
Understanding, right?
Yeah, thanks Ryan and Steve for the primer because it gives us the time to think about what we want to see. And Haley, John, Nathan, your comments are perfect of like, here's how I need to see it to understand what's going on. And that's what these primers, I think, are really going to help us do. So the rest of the board, if you have ideas of what you need to see to clarify things, get those questions out early so we can talk about them. I did have one in that related topic. Since we have time, can we get the expectation from Chabad of what, do they have expectations of what the Housing Advisory Committee is reviewing and is maybe scrutinizing that they would like to see? Does that make sense?
A funny little side note, Ryan joined us, I think like 2 weeks before we were passing the Chabad budget last year, and so had the initiation rites, if you will,
Hazing. Yeah. Gentle hazing.
do some early work with our board, that's mostly the Chabad. And so they was particularly Chair Harrington, or I should say in this case, Director Harrington, definitely honed in on what you guys are speaking to around the need for more of a primer for them before they just go in and adopt a budget. Because we put a lot of narrative slides, a lot of storytelling, a lot of things into a budget, but without knowing the acronyms, without knowing the fund structure, without knowing how the funds frankly are flowing. And then not to mention how we have general partnerships and limited partnerships, but only a portion of that is inflowing, outflowing. Incredibly complicated stuff. So that is what I think helped us think about this as a primer, because what that is doing is it's poising us to do a primer for the treasure board, for hey bod, to do that and because they see this once, it's to Nathan's point, they are only engaging once a year, you guys are engaging kind of throughout the year. So it is something we just gonna have to keep honing in on, is sort of how we tell that there is an intersectionality, but also they have their duty is simply on the federal and on the Hawk side of things. So I didn't fully, anything you want to add to that, Ryan? Or your reason?
No, I think the things that you brought up today around what would be helpful kind of for a public body, I think are the types of things that are also going to be helpful for the board of directors to know, since obviously they're working on behalf of our community. And so I think just bringing the additional transparency to it and knowing that there are kind of a group with a diverse set of backgrounds who are looking at our budget and recommending it, similar to the county who has a budget committee that stood up to look at the county's budget. So it's public participation and a group of community members able to see, review, and weigh in on the budget before it goes to them.
Frankly, I'm alarmed at how massive the supportive housing services is in your budget structure.
You mean the
It's a-
percent?
Or just the 95 million compared to all the other buckets in your budget. It's quite sizable and impactful.
All right. I did have one other comment. I think we probably timing wise need to move on, but if there's any other comments or questions, please ask. The other thing I had was last year, John and I were present at the HABOD budget presentation. I put it in my calendar. I blocked it off to be there. John, would love to have you there. I'll let the Housing Authority ask that question, but it is good for the board to be there to support the Housing Authority when they present that. All right. And so yeah, thank you, Ryan and Stephen. And our final agenda item, we're moving over to Carly.
Hey, good morning, committee members and guests. Thank you so much, Ryan. My name is Carly Silva Gabrielson. I have the honor of representing the Housing Department in Salem as a government relations manager with Washington County. So I am here today to chat with you about a few bills that came before the legislative session pertinent to your work. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So as many of you were tracking, we did just recently conclude the 2026 short legislative session, which convened on February 2nd and concluded on March 6th. There is a constitutional requirement for the legislative session to only last a certain period of time. So the short session per the Constitution can run a full 35 days. So the required end date for the legislative session was March 8th. We refer to it as sine die, which is Latin for without a day, but it really is just the adjourning of the legislative session. The short sessions have the bills capped that the members can introduce and that the committee members can introduce. So in a long session, we are seeing now about 3,500 bills introduced. So all of us who work in the building really look forward to the short session where that is a little bit more limited. So this year we reviewed 304 bills. And we just like to highlight that government relations and the Department of Housing staff are really attentive to the bills that may impact our programs and funding sources and constituencies. So that's really what we will focus on in the coming slides. Next slide, please. Wonderful. This was one of my favorite slides to talk about following the legislative session because it was really such a great victory. So House Bill 4036 launches the Housing Opportunity, Longevity, and Durability Fund, otherwise referred to as the HOLD Fund, which is dedicated to funding sources to preserve existing affordable housing. As many of you know, Washington County experienced what was really a crisis with Woodspring Apartments facing affordability expirations. And as we saw, having resources available at the right time is really critical to preserving regulated affordability. So this bill creates a more proactive framework to support those types of interventions. And there was an associated funding ask of $25 million that was provided. I will actually backtrack and say that the original funding ask was $100 million. We were really aiming high, the coalition was, and the legislature was able to put forward $25 million, balancing that account with all of the other very pressing revenue needs this cycle. But it is really significant to create this new fund, to provide this framework, and also this avenue to request more funding in the future. It's also worth highlighting that this is the first time that the state is utilizing a specific type of bonding, which is called Article 11 Q bonds. So again, a really great step forward by the state legislature. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So these two bills really focus on tenant privacy and tenant rights. So the first one, House Bill 4123, it really establishes common sense safeguards to protect personal identifying information, financially sensitive information, and private information that tenants share with landlords and property managers. So under this bill, the tenant's information may only be disclosed with their written consent or in response to a court order. So that was really great to move forward. And then the second bill, 1523, refers impacts the digital divide, and really what that is ensuring that tenants are able to utilize non-electronic forms of applications and paying their rent, key fobs, to really ensure that there is equity in accessing those very important communications and points of access. Of course, we know that many senior citizens and other members of our community just don't have those iPhones or really have access to data to really be able to utilize apps that are being applied today. So this bill passing forward was really crucial to, again, just that tenant right and protection. Next slide, please. Wonderful. So these two bills talk about revenue pieces. The first bill, 1507, is really about protecting state revenue and really reacting to the federal tax cuts that were enacted by Congress in 2025, which resulted in Oregon losing nearly $900 million from the state budget that we would have otherwise had. So what this bill does is that it partially disconnects the state from certain changes to preserve funding and really ultimately helping protect crucial investments in the programs that we really need and have stood up, such as housing stability and housing services. So that was a really great accomplishment by the legislature as well. And then the second one, 4136, is really worth highlighting. What it does is that it ends the vacation house tax break that was in statute. So really a second home, and redirects about $9 to $10 million per year from that tax break to provide down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and first-generation home buyers. And so it's projected that these funds will make home ownership possible for at least 300 households every biennium, instead of, frankly, providing a very unnecessary subsidy for vacation properties and those who are financially stable. And I think that concludes my slides. Let's click through. I will take questions. Yes, excellent. Any questions? Great. And, you know, if not, if there's something that comes to mind later today or next week, please reach out to, you know, staff there and they can connect with me. But we're always happy to be a resource about what's happening in Salem and legislative activity. So thank you so much for the opportunity to join you.
Thanks, Carly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carly.
The not to go back to the Housing Oregon budget recommendations, but it did remind me that that funding, that is the PSH funding, is being shifted towards preservation and towards home ownership, lift home ownership. So it would have been nice to have more first-time home buyer assistance because no one can afford to buy homes right now, the House Bill 4136, but hopefully we're finding other creative ways to help out there. All right. So that's all that we had for today. Is there, before we do our last vote, I promise last vote of the day, anyone else have anything they want to share? Any comments?
I have a question. Is there any way that the new HB 4123 tenant privacy could be impactful to the changes per HUD section 214 where you're being mandated to require verifying citizenship?
That's a great question.
Beth, you want
to take that one?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the answer is no, because there are carve outs for we're required to submit for HUD in terms of verifying eligibility for programs, for federal housing programs.
But couldn't you collect it and then not be able to provide it because the tenant doesn't sign off?
Unfortunately, no. The consent forms are also required elements of program participation. So it is it would be a loophole, but they thought of it and closed it. And the good news on that side is that it means that our other work in terms of delivering affordable housing is not going to be impacted by the tenant privacy law. We'll still be able to collect the necessary data and provide the necessary submissions to HUD with that new protection. And we already do make sure that we are holding a high standard for protecting participant privacy beyond what's necessary for their program participation.
Should be nice to be able to find a loophole. Very encouraged that House Bill create a loophole. Future, and we'll see those.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Haley. Okay, so with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
And a second?
Okay.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
So if we voted not to adjourn, will we have to stay here forever?
We would.
That's exactly right.
The recording has to go, not we don't have to stay. So motion's passed, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Right.